Welcome, everyone. We're here with a jam-packed session. We got a Yankee Astro game going on, a lot of things, some basketball trash talk, but we're here for our 1844 to 1877 time period 5 review. So let's get started. Here's our overview. They start with 1844 because that's the election of James K. Polk. And then in the year 1845, the quote, manifest destiny was coined by John L. O'Sullivan to describe the U.S. Belief that it should expand west to the Pacific Ocean. The Mexican-American War takes place 1846 to 1848, and that is American victory, and then it follows up with the Compromise of 1850. And then anything between 1820 and 1860 is called the antebellum period. That is the pre-Civil War period. Anything before the Civil War. Civil War years are 1861 to 1865. And then Reconstruction is from 1865 to 1877. So that is the general overview that we are going to go through slide by slide. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody need me to stop? Or can I go on to the first slide? You think we're all good? All right, you got 3 seconds. 2, 1. All right, so let's keep going now, and let's start with the election of James K. Polk. Polk was a Democrat, and he was nicknamed Young Hickory. That is because he followed in the footsteps of Old Hickory, Andrew Jackson. They do have similarities. But what's interesting about Polk, his presidency is defined by territorial expansion. So, and he does accomplish all of his goals in one term. This slogan, 5440 or fight, refers to the Oregon Territory. That was his goal, to acquire everything below the line 5440, or else we would go to war with Great Britain again. And he also wants to annex Texas, which he does, although not exactly. It's after his election, but before his inauguration. That's a quick slide, everyone. I get a little carried away. Polk's not going to be on the test. But do you have any questions on that at all? All right. So we move. Karl Marx. We have Karl Marx in the screen. By the way, Karl Marx's birthday is May 5th, in case anyone was interested. All right. So now let's go to the Manifest Destiny slide. So this is the term that was used by John L. O'Sullivan, the belief that the U.S. should expand to the Pacific Ocean, definitely inspired by religion, inspired by God. Now, I know that these are not in the time period, but if you have anything on expansion, these are the major U.S. expansion moments. So in 1803, we acquired Louisiana Purchase. Then in 1819, we acquired Florida in the Adams-Onis Treaty. Now, the annexation of Texas, I'm going to make this very brief because I know some of you don't want to be thinking about Texas right now. But in 1830, well, let's say early 1830s, Texas was Mexican territory, and it was overrun by many Americans who were invited into the area. And there were so many Americans there that the Mexican government finally said, we're closing the border. But there were too many at that time, so they stage a rebellion, and the rebellion is led by Sam Houston, and Sam Houston is victorious. Their rallying point was, remember, the Alamo, but Texas will be its own republic, the Lone Star Republic, for about 10 years. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that America wasn't able to add another slave state at the time. That's, again, abbreviated version. Does anybody have any questions at all? Am I going too fast, too slow? I hear nothing, so I'm assuming I'm okay. All right. I just told you about Oregon. We acquired that under Polk as well. And then the Mexican cession will be the land we acquire as a result of the next slide, which is the Mexican-American War. This seems to be a topic they really do focus on. So let's make sure we understand it. 1846 to 1848 is the Mexican-American War. Now, what causes the war? At this, very good, Karl Marx. I'm glad you know we did not get Texas in the Mexican cession. Thank you. So, this is a border dispute. The U.S. believed that the border should be the Rio Grande. the border between Texas and Mexico. Mexico believed it should be the Nueces River. So there is a disputed territory inside those two rivers. We sent soldiers down, and the soldiers were fired on. So now the question is, were they fired in the disputed territory? Were they killed above the river, below the river? And I'm not sure if anybody truly knows. There was a young congressman. You all know his name. His name was Abraham Lincoln. And Lincoln called for the spot resolutions. Spot resolutions, he wanted to know the exact location where our soldiers were attacked. He didn't think we should be going to war, but we went to war anyway. Any questions on that at all? All right, we're good? Okay, so now, Kenny, I can't tell what type of emojis those are. I'm not good with the emojis. All right, so now, results of the war. America wins, and the treaty is the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. We acquire this large area of land called the Mexican Cession. Notice Texas is not in there. We already had Texas. So it's all of these future states. And you just have to know this. It increases sectional tensions. What are we going to do with the new territory? Will it be free territory? Will it be a slave state? This was the big debate, and it increased these tensions. Very important to understand. Is everybody clear on that? All right. You sure? Good. Moving right along. Here is how we settled the Mexican Cession. It is called the Compromise of 1850. And the Compromise of 1850 had 5 different parts to it. It was a very complicated process. It involved Stephen Douglas. This is Henry Clay's last stand. And number 1, California enters as a free state. Remember, 1 year earlier, many people moved out for the California Gold Rush. There were many Northerners there, so they focused on being a free state. Number 2, everything else will be based on popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty is let the people vote. So we're going to let the people living there decide whether or not they would like slavery or not like slavery. Third part, there will be a stricter fugitive slave law, which is obviously throwing something toward the South. The fourth part, the slave trade, the auctioning of slaves will be banned in Washington, D.C. And then the fifth part, which you don't need to know, is that $10 million was given to Texas for a strip of land. Does anybody need me to repeat any of those? Oh, you got it. No problem. But I hope this is going well and clear for everyone. It's the big picture that you have to know. I have to say it is quite enjoyable to do a review class and watch the Astros play the Yankees at the same time. I'd like a Springer home run right now. All right. So is everybody good? Liz, you still working on that slide? Okay. I know, Kenny. I should be watching that also. I figure maybe I'll flip to that. Is it TNT? It is. Okay. Oh my God. How is Boston winning? Wow. All right. Is everybody good with the Compromise of 1850? Okay. Perfect. Yes, I will try to stay on task. I apologize. All right. So now, this decade, the 1850s, is really all of the tensions that emerge that are going to eventually lead to the Civil War. All right. So I even left causes blank because the reality is slavery is the cause of the Civil War. You can make arguments that it was a constitutional crisis, states' rights issues, but the bottom line is if there was no slavery, there would be no Civil War. All right, so these are the events I would love for everybody to know. First, the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Very simple. 2 new areas. They would like to become states. Use popular sovereignty. They're just going to vote, use popular sovereignty. Very simple. If you want to know this on a higher level, which you don't have to, that was Stephen Douglas's, he was trying to get the railroad to be built through Chicago. His home state was Illinois, but I'm getting carried away. When the people voted, all hell broke loose, everyone. This is called Bleeding Kansas. You have pro-slavery people, you have anti-slavery people. So you can just write down, see, I do think it's better for me to type more. Violence erupted between pro and anti-slavery forces. All right? And that's why they call it Bleeding Kansas. You might remember John Brown. He used his machete hacked 5 people to pieces. It was called the Potawatomi Massacre, but you don't need to know that. All right. Next, Sumner Brooks incident. That was when the Congressman Charles Sumner gave a very passionate speech against slavery. And what happened to him when he returned? He was beat with a cane by Preston Brooks. Preston Brooks was from South Carolina. Charles Sumner was from Massachusetts. Just simply showing the tensions that are emerging. Is everybody good on that? Am I going too fast? All right. So now this is the very, very important one right here. I don't know why I did that. All right. You must know the Dred Scott Supreme Court case. It was revolved around a slave whose master took him to free territory. There's a lot more detail to this. For now, you need to know the details more. Like very, very funny. I like that one. But you need to just know the big picture here. The Supreme Court ruled that slaves were property. Supreme Court ruled that Dred Scott was not even a citizen. So if he's not a citizen, he doesn't even have the right to sue. And that further inflames the Northern tensions. Is everybody clear on the Dred Scott case? Very important to understand. Okay? And then, you know what? I can't control myself here. 1859 was John Brown's raid. So that's that same guy who hacked people to pieces. Now he tried to start a slave revolt, and he was going to break into an arsenal and hand the weapons to the slaves. But he was captured, tried for treason, and sentenced to death. Is everybody clear on that? All right, and then the election of Abraham Lincoln is 1860. As soon as he was all right, we have some confusion. Go ahead. Do you have a question, or what would you like me to do? Ask the question first. Is it just tell me if you're okay, Dred Scott. So Dred Scott was a slave. His master took him to free territory. When he was in free territory, he made the argument that I should be free. So he filed a lawsuit with lawyers, and the Supreme Court ruled that you're not free, that slaves are property. So if you're property, it means that your slave owner can take you anywhere, even if it is a state that did not allow slavery. And by being, you good? Okay. All right. Make sure you know the election of Abraham Lincoln is going to lead to South Carolina, led to South Carolina seceding. So South Carolina broke away. That was the first state to break away. They all thought, the southern states thought that Lincoln was going to free all the slaves. That was actually not his plan. All right. Are we good? We got 2 more slides to go, everyone. You staying with me? Beautiful. All right. So now, Civil War. I don't have much here. Union versus Confederacy. Which advantages did each one have? The Union's advantage would be that they had like more money. The Union had like the better infrastructure, better manufacturing. But the Confederacy's advantage was that it, had the better generals. And the Confederacy also, they were fighting in the South. So the Confederacy knew the land better. All right, now we have 2 Lincoln things here. The Gettysburg Address, I know you read that in English, so you should be familiar with that. And the Emancipation Proclamation. This one you might still be confused on. Okay, so Lincoln freed the slaves in the Confederacy, but not the border states. So what does that mean? I hope everybody's going to listen now. There were 4 states that did not join the Confederacy, but they had slaves. Those states were Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware. So they had slaves, and he did not free them, because if he did, those 4 states would have broken away, joined the Confederacy, and remember, Lincoln's goal was to win, to preserve the Union and win the war. His primary goal was not to free slavery. I will explain that again. If anybody's confused, please let me know. Nope, you're all good? Okay. And the surrender was at Appomattox Courthouse. All right. So now we have our last slide, and this is Reconstruction. Are you all ready? All right. This one, I'm probably going to start typing here. Reconstruction is 1865 to 1877. Now, the president's plan for Reconstruction, president wanted to be lenient. All right. The president was Lincoln and then Andrew Johnson. They wanted to be lenient. They wanted to be very quick, allow the states to get back in as fast as possible. It was so easy that they only wanted 10% of the people in the southern state to take an oath of loyalty. 10% take an oath of loyalty. Is everybody clear on the president's plan? Okay. Now you have Congress's plan. Congress was led by radical Republicans who wanted to punish the Confederacy. So their idea was, first, let's make it 51% to take the oath of loyalty. But that's not the primary part of their plan. The primary part is former Confederates can't vote or run for office. That's pretty strict. Okay? Can't vote or run for office. All right? And they wanted to create 5 military districts. So that is the congressional plan. Is everybody clear on the differences? All right. You sure? All right. Now, positives for African Americans. You have the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment. 13th Amendment, abolished slavery. I guess I'll write it in there. 13th Amendment, abolished slavery. 14th Amendment. 14th Amendment provided citizenship. Provided citizenship for African Americans. And then the 15th Amendment, right to vote for black men. And don't forget that was very upsetting to Susan B. Anthony and some of the other suffragists who worked so hard to get slavery abolished and then were upset that they were not included. Is everybody clear on that? Another positive is the Freedmen's Bureau, which provided food, clothing, shelter, education, job training for African Americans and poor white people. And those are your positives. Do you have any questions? All right. Now we go to the negatives. Black codes are any southern state law that restricted the rights of African Americans. They weren't allowed to serve on a jury. They weren't allowed to own a bar. They weren't allowed to meet late at night. And then sharecropping was what basically kept African Americans in a cycle of debt. They would rent out the land, but they would have to pay for it with their crops. And this was called sharecropping. All right. Carpetbaggers and scalawags are people who allegedly tried to help out during Reconstruction, but the reality is that they took advantage of it. And they seem to like this question as well. So what led to the end of Reconstruction? There was a controversial election. The election is between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel J. Tilden. And it was disputed. I'm going into this very briefly, obviously. And the compromise that they made, very good, Karl Marx, is that the Democrats would not challenge the results if the Republicans removed the 5 districts. But remember, there was a question we had recently. The other reason is that the North lost support. They just kind of lost interest in maintaining Reconstruction. Okay, we did that pretty well, about 20 minutes. Do you have any questions? So the Confederacy surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse, which is a place in Virginia. Right here, Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. All right, you were a wonderful audience. Do you have any questions? I hope this worked. I hope you took notes. Don't be afraid to ask any questions. Uh, by the way, Matt, do you know what the Plain Edge kids have to do for homework? Or do you want to know, or no? I shall tell you tomorrow. All right, you're not interested. All right, so I'll tell you in class. Sounds good. All right, great job, everyone. I hope you took notes because that's one less thing you have to worry. You got to be very efficient, and I will see you all tomorrow in class for abbreviated classes. Thanks a lot.
Bye,
Take care.
Simone.
See you later.